ownership of certain ecclesiastical objects which is in dispute and which you are here to decide. I represent the Comte de St. Juste, who was in possession of these objects until last year when they disappeared. The Comte is the plaintiff in the first action against the Right Reverend Simon Pike, the abbot of the monastery of St. Joseph of Cupertino, for the return of these objects. The abbot, who is represented by my learned friend Mr. Lotterby, is being sued in the second action by Miss Jessica Montford, who is also claiming possession of these objects. Miss Montford is represented by my learned friend Mr. Kumar. And now I call my client, the Comte Philippe de St. Juste.
What is your religion?
Catholic.
You are Philippe Julien Désiré de St. Juste, Comte de Marajoul.
I am.
You live at Château Hiver, Luçon, near Nîmes.
That is one of my addresses.
One of them, Comte?
I have also a house in Paris and flats in London and New York.
Which one do you spend most of the time?
The chateau.
Then that is the one we are interested in. You are a French citizen, are you not?
Yes, my lord, but my mother was American, and I was partly educated in England. I am therefore prepared to give my evidence in English.
You anticipate my question.
Oh, I'm so sorry, my
That's
lord.
all right. Yes, Mr.
Thank you, Lord. Comte, did you in March 1971 purchase a quantity of antiques from an Italian dealer?
Yes.
What is the name of the dealer?
Was. He died last year.
What was his name?
Emilio Rossi. He had a shop in Via Verdi in Rome.
Was Signor Rossi a well-known antique dealer?
In ecclesiastical antiques, particularly, yes.
And what were the antiques that you purchased from Signor Rossi in 1971?
They were a collection of medieval ecclesiastical vestments. I have a list here. Shall I read it out, my lord?
Is it an agreed document?
Yes, it is, my lord.
There are also some photographs of the collection, my lord, which we shall be looking at in due course.
Very well, Count.
I bought from Signor Rossi the following. One alb said to be the Alb of St. Honoratus.
Saint who?
Honoratus, my lord, 5th century bishop of Arles.
Oh. You say the Alb of St. Honoratus?
Yes, my lord.
Perhaps you would explain for us what is an alb.
Oh, certainly, my lord. It is an ankle-length sleeved tunic, usually made of white linen, and it is worn by a priest often beneath other vestments.
Yes, I see.
The Carcassonne Cope, first quarter of the 13th century, Opus Anglicanum.
Oh, well, now that term has some special significance, no doubt.
Yes, my lord, it's a technical term for a certain type of medieval embroidery.
A chasuble, second quarter of the 13th century, also Opus Anglicanum. One amice, it's a rectangle of white linen covering the shoulders. Also a dalmatic or tunicle, calf-length sleeved tunic. A maniple, it's a narrow strip of material worn over the forearm. A stole.
Yeah, well, we know what a stole is.
Quite so. Mitre, 15th century, jeweled. Gloves, 13th century, also jeweled. A gold double cross with pearls, circa 1250. And a reliquary pendant of the Holy Thorn, enameled gold, set with 2 large amethysts, 13th century.
What did you pay for this collection?
145,000 American dollars.
And this collection is the one that you allege the defendant, the Right Reverend Simon Pike, stole from you.
Oh, I don't merely allege it. He did steal it from me.
Did the defendant ever visit the chateau?
He stayed last year.
And what brought the abbot to Luçon last year?
A Compostellan prior died whilst on holiday near Luçon. As a matter of courtesy, my estate manager, who is, alas, of a religious inclination, my estate manager, incidentally, without asking my permission, proposed that the deceased prior, Father Joseph Ragnaud, should lie in state in my private chapel.
And when did the abbot appear at Luçon?
3 days after the death of the prior, Father Simon Pike and a lay brother of the Compostellan order, Brother Januarius, arrived at my chateau asking for the body. They had the necessary authorizations to export it back to England.
Well, why should they want to do that?
I haven't the faintest idea, my lord.
Did they give any reason for wanting the body?
I believe they did, my lord. Unfortunately, I didn't pay much attention at the time.
Were you present at Luçon when Father Pike arrived?
Yes, I had just returned from Paris. I must confess I was delighted to see the abbot.
Why was that?
Because I wouldn't now be left with the unwanted corpse of some unknown monastic.
Did you show the abbot the regalia?
No, but he saw them in the chapel. They were on display in glass cases.
Did you have any discussion about them?
Oh, yes, indeed. At dinner, he asked how long the regalia had been there.
And?
I told him as I have told you.
Is that all that was said about the regalia?
He said the order had once said something not dissimilar.
Rubbish. I said the vestments were ours.
Father Pike, you must not interrupt.
I apologize, my lord.
Not dissimilar was the expression used.
What else was discussed at dinner?
Money. He asked me to contribute $250,000 to some pet project of his.
What project?
Oh, it was to finance a home for unmarried mothers or 4-year-old drug addicts or something equally improbable. I'm afraid I didn't pay much attention to it at the time.
You let him know that you weren't interested.
Yes. He said if the order had its regalia still, he wouldn't be asking for charity now.
Nevertheless, whilst he was with you, you remained on cordial terms.
Oh, naturally. I entertained him to dinner, then flew to Geneva on business. When I came back, corpse, coffin, abbot, and $145,000 worth of historic ecclesiastical regalia were missing.
Did you, after the disappearance of the regalia, try to contact the abbot?
Oh, yes, I phoned him at the monastery of St. Joseph of Cupertino near Fulchester.
You spoke to him?
No, the abbot was not available. He was, they said, in retreat.
Did you speak to one of the monks?
I did.
Did you inquire about the missing regalia?
Yes. He said the only regalia there belonged to the Compostellan order. Then he hung up.
Thank you.
Comte, when Father Pike came to Lausanne and he dined with you, even at that time he told you that this collection was the property of the Compostellan order, did he not?
No. As I said before, not dissimilar was the expression used. But in any case, some of these vestments are 700 or 800 years old. In that time, they could have belonged to almost anybody, and they probably did.
It didn't disturb you that you would probably purchase the missing relics of an ancient religious order?
I bought the regalia perfectly legally from an Italian dealer in Rome.
Why?
Why?
Yes, Comte, why did you buy these vestments?
Because I wanted to earn a collection.
Why? Are you a religious man?
Religious? What is the point of that question?
For your information, Comte, I'm trying to establish the motive for your purchase.
No, I'm not religious.
Do priestly vestments hold any particular significance for you other than as the working clothes of the clergy?
No.
Are you an expert in medieval embroidery?
No.
Then why buy this collection of Opus Anglicanum?
Because it is beautiful, and also because it is unique.
Was that the only reason?
Well, at $145,000, I think it was also cheap at the price.
In what way, cheap?
Well, the collection must be worth nearly twice that now.
How much?
About $250,000.
Over £100,000. The collection then has no particular significance for you except as a financial investment.
But what is wrong with a financial investment? Works of art are about the only things in these days of inflation that keep their value. Unfortunately, no one can afford to buy old masters or impressionists anymore. Medieval embroidery seemed an ideal alternative. It was either that, manuscripts, or musical boxes.
So, Comte, should this court find that the collection is rightfully yours, you will at some future date sell it in order to realize your investment.
Well, it is possible, yes.
Are you a wealthy man, Comte?
Wealthy is a relative term.
I believe I read somewhere that you own one of the classic vineyards in the Bordeaux district. Am I right?
Yes. If you must know, I'm also a director of an oil company, and I have a number of other business interests. I'm not a pauper.
Obviously not. When you purchased this collection from Signor Rossi, were you aware that it was the property of the Compostellan order?
Obviously not. And surely the question of the ownership of this regalia is what this court is here to decide.
And you are asking the court to believe that the abbot is a liar.
Oh, it is hardly for a mere layman to accuse the abbot of an ancient religious order of being a liar and a thief, even should it be true. No, the abbot doesn't impress me as a man given to admitting that he has made a mistake, even when he has.
Neither do you, Comte, it would seem. No further questions?
Monsieur le Comte, I appear on behalf of Miss Jessica Montford, the second plaintiff in this case. When you purchased the Montford collection...
No. I bought a collection of medieval ecclesiastical regalia from an Italian dealer in Rome. It was not the Montfort collection. Was it the Compostellan collection?
Did you obtain a receipt from Signor Rossi?
Yes.
Well, did Signor Rossi give you any other documents connected with the collection?
Yes.
What were they?
A letter dated 1801, which showed that the collection had been bought by a Hungarian family, and various other documents, letters, wills, etc., showing how the regalia was handed down through the family until it was acquired by Signor Rossi in 1970 from a descendant of the original purchaser. They are in court, I believe.
Lots of documents.
Well, you need something of the sort to authenticate the collection.
To guarantee the collection is authentic.
Precisely.
You are aware, of course, that my client has had these documents analysed by an assistant keeper with the Department of Manuscripts of the British Museum.
Just a minute. Are we going to be hearing evidence from this person?
Yes, my lord, in due course. Are you aware, Comte, that in Dr. Atwater's opinion, these documents are the documents which you believe authenticate the collection of Opus Anglicanum you purchased? In Dr. Atwater's opinion, these documents are forgeries?
When I bought the collection, I had no reason to believe that the documents were forgeries.
Nonetheless, Comte, as we shall hear in due course, these documents are forgeries.
But the regalia isn't. That, at least, is authentic Opus Anglicanum.
Yes, but no one is questioning the authenticity of the regalia, Comte, merely your right to own it.
Well, it cost me a great deal of money.
Well, that is irrelevant if the person who sold it to you had no right to its possession.
That has not been proved.
It will be, Comte.
So you say.
Had you ever had any dealings with Emilio Rossi prior to this occasion?
Yes.
When?
In 1968, I think it was, when I bought a missal, a 15th century missal from him, one that had once belonged to the Medici family.
It was also authenticated by means of documents.
It bore the Medici crest.
You were satisfied it was authentic?
I consulted experts. They were satisfied.
Oh, did you also consult experts about the collection of Opus Anglicanum?
Yes.
What was their reaction?
That it was unique and authentic.
Did they also study the documents?
No.
Why not?
Because what I was paying for was the vestments, not the letters.
What would you have done, Comte, if your experts had examined the letters and found them to be forged? I mean, would you have gone ahead and bought the vestments, even knowing that they were probably stolen?
Well, the question is hypothetical and totally irrelevant. I don't see how my client can possibly answer it.
I agree, Mr. Fry. I don't think the question is well phrased.
Very well, my lord. Comte, when you purchased the collection from Emilio Rossi, were you aware that he was then under investigation by the Italian police for his part in the illegal exportation of stolen Italian church plate?
No, sir, I was not.
Yet you've already told my learned friend that at $145,000 you thought the collection an excellent investment.
Well, it was.
Well, were you not surprised at the low price asked by Signor Rossi, who, as you have said, was an experienced dealer in ecclesiastical antiques?
Well, Rossi wanted to sell, I wanted to buy. We fixed the price. I paid it.
Well, the price must have suggested to you that the regalia might be stolen.
No. That was the price agreed. The $250,000 I've mentioned is only my estimate of the value today, but if you auctioned it, it might not sell.
Thank you, Comte. I have no further questions, my lord.
Comte, when you purchased the regalia from Signor Rossi, had you any reason to believe that he was anything other than a perfectly respectable dealer in ecclesiastical antiques?
No.
Had you ever heard of the so-called Montfort collection?
No. I hadn't even heard of the Montfort family.
I call the next witness for the plaintiff, Christopher Seymour.
What is your religion?
I'm a Scientologist.
Oh, dear, Mr. Seymour, Scientology is not in law a religion.
One day it will be, my lord.
Perhaps, but not for the moment. Would you like to affirm?
Very well.
You are Christopher Martin Seymour of 16 Cocklefield Close, East Grinstead.
I am.
In 1973, were you a member of the Compostellan Order?
I was.
What was your position in the order?
I was a novice.
For how long, Mr. Seymour?
There is a 6-year probationary period before you become a full member of the order. It is the same with most religious orders.
Oh, yeah.
Which abbey of the Compostellan Order did you enter?
The Abbey of St. Joseph of Cupertino, near Fulchester.
The abbey of which the defendant is abbot.
Yes.
And what name had you taken in the order?
Brother Januarius.
Januarius?
Bishop and martyr, my lord. Died 305. Feast day, September the 19th, my birthday. In the Cathedral of Naples, there is a glass vial containing his dried blood, which miraculously liquefies 18 times a year.
Oh, indeed.
In 1973, did you accompany the defendant to Luçon to recover the body of Father Joseph Aragno?
I did.
Did the abbot himself select you to travel with him?
Yes. I speak fluent French.
Were you with the abbot when you first visited the chapel and saw the vestments?
Yes.
What was the abbot's reaction when he saw the vestments?
Remarkable.
Remarkable?
Like a shark scenting prey. He said it was a sign from God. The lost treasures of the Compostellans had at last been recovered.
He identified them immediately as being the property of the Compostellans.
Oh, yes.
Were you impressed?
I was.
Why?
I was never aware the abbot was an expert on Opus Anglicanum. Or the lost treasures of the Compostellans, come to that.
Why do you say that, Mr. Seymour?
Well, my lord, the abbot, who was my ecclesiastical superior for nearly 3 horrendous years, never struck me as being a student of history or the arts. He is a painfully practical man.
Did the abbot speak to the Comte de St Juste about the vestments?
Very little. He asked how long he'd had them, and remarked that the order had had a regalia which was not dissimilar.
Not dissimilar. He used those words.
Yes.
What was the Comte's reaction?
Polite, but dismissive.
The Comte then flew to Geneva. What did you and the abbot do in his absence?
Here, we stole the vestments.
How?
We placed the body of Father Aragno in the coffin which had been prepared for him. Then the abbot opened the glass cases.
Weren't the cases locked?
Oh, yes.
Then how did the abbot open the cases?
With a penknife.
He forced the cases open, in fact.
Yes.
And then?
He placed the vestments in the coffin with Father Joseph Aragno.
In with the dead body?
Yes. In the Abbey of St. Joseph of Cupertino, the Reverend Abbot isn't noted for his sensitivity.
Mr. Seymour, do you know the history of the Compostellan vestments, including the so-called Alb of St. Honoratus?
They were held in a Compostellan monastery in Czechoslovakia. Sometime after the Russian invasion in 1968, they are said to have vanished. They have never been seen since.
Seymour, in your opinion, were the vestments in the Comte de St Juste's collection, in fact, the lost treasures of the Compostellans?
I've no idea.
Yes, Mr. Lotton?
Nothing, my lord.
No.
And I very much doubt if the abbot knew either.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour.
Mr. Seymour, you told my learned friend that you spent nearly 3 horrendous years in the Compostellan order. Yes.
You spent these 3 years at the monastery of St. Joseph of Cupertino near Fulchester.
Yes.
Under the authority of the abbot, the defendant, the Right Reverend Simon Pike.
Yes.
When did you leave the Compostellan order, Mr.
In
Seymour?
1973.
Well, that was shortly after the trip to France with the abbot.
Yes.
Why?
Why did I leave the order?
Yes.
Because I found monastic life too limiting.
Too limiting, Mr. Seymour.
Yes, the disciplines were too old-fashioned, too limiting.
Is it not true, Mr. Seymour, that you left the Compostellan order because the abbot, the defendant, the Right Reverend Simon Pike, refused to permit you to take your final vows?
It wasn't quite that simple.
Nonetheless, Mr. Seymour, you were refused admittance to the order, were you not?
Yes.
By the Right Reverend Simon Pike, the abbot.
Yes.
Now, why did the Right Reverend Simon Pike refuse you?
Some nonsense about my not being suitable for monastic life.
Not suitable.
Well, what the Right Reverend Simon Pike meant was I wasn't willing to accept him as God, like the rest of the frightened little sycophants at the monastery.
It is true, is it not, Mr. Seymour, that you were deeply upset by the abbot's decision?
Not at all. In fact, he did me quite a favor.
Oh, in what way?
Well, I would never have found the Scientologists otherwise.
Oh, I see. Mr. Seymour, isn't it true that before attempting to join the Compostellans, you also tried to become a Buddhist monk?
I was searching for something. Buddhism simply wasn't the answer.
Did they refuse to accept you too?
I told you, Buddhism wasn't the answer for me.
The Master of Novices of the Buddhist sect refused to accept you also, Mr. Seymour?
Well, no, it wasn't the way you're making it sound.
Wasn't it?
No, we discussed the matter and simply decided Buddhism wasn't the answer for me. It was perfectly amiable.
Mr. Seymour, the truth is that when you and the abbot were entertained at dinner by the Comte, the abbot told the Comte that the regalia in the chapel belonged to the order.
He merely said that the regalia was not dissimilar to vestments the Compostellans had once owned.
Not dissimilar. Does the abbot usually employ such legalistic phraseology?
Well, he used it this time.
And again, you've described to my learned friend in graphic detail the defendant's actions when you were in the chapel of the Comte de St chateau, how he forced open the glass cases, took out the vestments, placed them in the coffin with the corpse.
Well, that's how it happened.
You also said that you doubted that the abbot knew the vestments were opus Anglicanum, or even that they were the lost treasures of the Compostellans.
Well,
Are you suggesting, Mr. Seymour, that the abbot, the defendant, the Right Reverend Simon Pike, broke open those glass cases, took those valuable vestments merely because he thought they were pretty?
Well, no.
Mr. Seymour, you do not become the abbot of a religious order, or for that matter, the master of novices of a Buddhist monastery, without being a man of courage, probity, and a shrewd judge of human nature.
Then the order certainly made a mistake when they promoted Father Pike.
I've no further questions of this witness.
That completes the case for the first plaintiff, my lord.
I call the defendant, the Right Reverend Simon Pike.
Take the Bible in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
In a moment, my friend, when I've examined the document. I mustn't just carelessly add my consent to just anything. Yes, that's all right. I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are the Right Reverend Simon Matthew Harcourt de Quincey Pike of the Monastery of St. Joseph of Cupertino, Mearside, near Fulchester.
Yes.
How long have you been a member of the Compostellan Order, Father?
14 years.
What was your occupation before you joined the order?
Well, I was currency advisor to a merchant bank in the City of London.
A post requiring great financial skill and honesty.
Oh, yes, you can lose your employer a great deal of money if you're lacking in either.
How did you come to leave the bank?
Well, I resigned to join the order.
You were not fired or asked to resign.
No, of course not.
And after less than 14 years in the order, you have been promoted to abbot.
Well, promotion in a monastery doesn't depend upon seniority, and in the Compostellan order, the abbot is elected by the members of the order.
Elected?
Yes, my lord, the members of the order meet and decide who they want to be their leader. A name is sent forward to Rome, and there they make up their final minds.
Yes, Father Pike, what would you say are the qualities required of an abbot?
I think understanding, my lord, and firmness. Above all, an ability to deal with the outside world.
The outside world?
Yes, no monastery is a Shangri-La, my lord. We have worldly problems, gas bills and electricity bills, and we have to pay the rates. It isn't holiness that keeps a monastery going, my lord. It's an ability to balance the bills.
A talent you obviously possess.
Precisely.
Father, you've heard the previous evidence of how you came to the Comte's chateau to collect the body of Father Joseph Aragno, and that you left with the Comte's collection of vestments.
Yes, that's quite correct.
Father Pike, you admit to breaking open these glass cases in which the vestments were displayed.
Yes, my lord. Under the circumstances, I had no alternative.
What do you mean?
I had pointed out to the Count, as diplomatically as I could, that the vestments were the property of my order, and that he had a moral obligation to return them to me at once.
And what was the Comte's reaction?
Compound of skepticism and indifference. I realized that persuasion would be a waste of time, so I took steps to reclaim the property of my order. I wrapped the body of Father Joseph in the vestments and brought them back to this country.
The case against Father Simon Pike will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. A French count who is also a dollar millionaire, the abbot of a monastery, and a lady schoolteacher are the three people who each claim ownership of a famous collection of church robes and regalia worth £100,000 in a civil case which continues in Fulchester Crown Court today.
Yes, Mr. Fry.
Father Pike, you've admitted that you took from the Comte de St chapel the vestments which you allege belong to the Compostellan order.
Yes.
What proof have you that they belong to the order?
Proof? But the vestments have belonged to the Compostellan order on and off for about 800 years.
On and off? You mean they've not been constantly in the possession of the order?
Not constantly, no.
So there's been no continuity of possession?
Well, presumably not.
Well, what is the longest period that the vestments have been out of the possession of the order?
Well, I can't tell you exactly.
Well, approximately. Has the order been without the vestments for 10, 20, 30 years?
About 150 years.
150 years? That's quite a long time.
Yes.
Then what proof have you that the vestments which you, to use your own words, reclaimed are the same ones that the order lost?
Well, of course they are.
Why, of course?
Well, there's the Alb. The Alb is unmistakable.
That is the Alb of St. Honoratus.
Yes, my lord.
Yes.
The Alb is described in many documents.
You're an expert on Opus Anglicanum?
No, sir.
You're an expert on medieval religious vestments?
No.
The treasures of the Compostellan order were preserved in a Czechoslovakian monastery, were they not?
Yes.
Did you ever visit this monastery?
Yes, I did.
When?
In 1965. I was sent by Rome to negotiate with the civil authorities on a legal matter.
And did you see these treasures?
Yes, I did.
How many times?
Just once.
Just once? And how long did you spend looking at the regalia?
Well, considerable length of time.
I asked you how long.
Well, I don't remember.
Minutes, hours, days?
About 3 hours.
Oh, 3 hours. And during these 3 hours, did you examine anything else, or did you spend the entire time looking at the regalia?
No, I looked at all the treasures of the monastery, but there aren't very many of them. We're in a poor order.
Now, according to the inventory given to us by the Comte de St, there are 12 items in his collection alone.
Yes.
So that during that 3 hours, even at a most generous estimate, it's unlikely, is it not, that you were unable to devote more than, say, 10 minutes to each item?
Well, I can't really say. I do say that some of these items are unmistakable. The alb, the orb, the scepter, the double cross, the reliquary pendant.
And yet you're asking the jury to believe that the minute you stepped into the Comte de St chapel in 1973, you were immediately able to identify the lost treasures of the Compostellans, treasures that you'd seen only briefly nearly 10 years before.
I recognized them. It's the truth.
You must have a remarkable memory, Father Pike.
Yes, I have.
Indeed. Tell me, Father Pike, why did you take the vestments belonging to the Comte de St?
They are the property of my order.
Was that your only reason?
What other reason could there be?
What are you going to do with these vestments, should the jury find in your favour?
Do with them?
Oh, come now, Father Pike, is it not a fact that you've already made inquiries about selling the vestments, including the so-called Alb of St. Honoratus?
You plan to sell this collection, Father Pike?
The collection is not mine to sell, my lord. That decision would have to be made by somebody far above my head.
Nevertheless, it is the intention that this collection should be sold if the jury find for you?
Yes, my lord.
Why?
The Compostellans are not a wealthy order, my lord. We do have commitments in this country and overseas.
What commitments?
Well, £10,000, for example, could be used to finish a hostel on Mearside for young drug addicts. Another £90,000 we could well spend extending our work for famine relief abroad. In Chad and in Niger and in Bangladesh. We have many calls upon us. We have not enough money to respond to them.
So you would sell the alleged treasures of your own order?
We are told not to lay up treasures upon earth, Mr. Fry.
Did you approach the Comte de St just for money for these good works you speak of?
Yes, I did.
What was his reply?
He refused.
And when he refused, you stole his collection of vestments.
I reclaimed the property of the order. And what we do with them now is up to us.
Father Pike, as you know, I represent the second plaintiff in this case, Miss Jessica Montford. It is our case that the St. Juste collection and the alleged treasure of the Compostillans is one and the same. It is, in fact, the collection held by the Montfort family for over 150 years.
Well, this particular collection of vestments has, in fact, been the property of my order since the 13th century.
How do you know?
Well, there are documents.
Oh, by documents, I presume you're referring to the deed of gift signed by Count Raymond of Toulouse in 1266. A photocopy of this document, my lord, will be found amongst the agreed bundle of documents.
I have it.
Father Pike, is that the document to which you refer?
Yes?
Well, my client will be calling an expert witness who will say that this document is, in fact, a forgery.
Rubbish.
We shall see, Father Pike. How long do you claim that your order held the vestments?
Until 1720.
What happened then?
They were stolen.
And when were they recovered?
In 1898, I think.
And they vanished once again in 1968, I think you
Yes.
said. Well, where were the vestments in the 180 years between 1720 and 1898?
Well, I don't know.
Well, surely your order must have attempted to trace its treasures.
I suppose so, yes.
And surely there must have been records of those attempts.
My order went through a very difficult period in the 18th century, culminating with the French Revolution. And most of our treasures and our lands were lost, and certainly most of our records.
So, the documents which may have assisted us in learning how your order lost the regalia, you say are themselves lost.
Yes.
Well, if there are no records, you're not then in a position to confirm or deny whether the collection of vestments you stole or reclaimed from the Comte de St was in fact the Montfort collection.
Well, there are more recent records.
What?
An inventory was made in Czechoslovakia in 1922. Photographs were taken.
Yes, 50 years ago.
Yes. The documents should be here in court.
Yes, the court has them, Father Pike. And it will also be hearing expert evidence as to the precise reliance that can be placed on this so-called inventory and these blurred photographic images.
Well, I don't care what your experts are going to say. The fact remains, these vestments were returned to my order in 1898. Now, I think we'd probably have heard about it if, during the years that they were missing, they had belonged to this, whatever it's called, private collection.
Why?
Well, because I don't believe that a collection of rare and historic vestments can disappear into a private collection without trace for 150 years.
Then what happened to the vestments during those years?
I don't know.
Well, perhaps they did disappear without trace, as you say, and the Montfort family purchased them.
All I can say is whoever believed they owned those vestments during those years, they were in fact the rightful property of my order.
Property, which, as we've heard, you're eager to sell.
No, not eager. Forced.
Forced? What do you mean, Father Pike?
My lord, in order to conduct a religious way of life and a religious institution, and to encourage other people to live that way of life, money, mammon, finance, call it what you will, is as necessary as oxygen.
So you see yourself merely as a money raiser?
As abbot, my first duty is the continuity of the order and the welfare, both physical and mental, of my monks. I cannot do that if I'm forever running down to the bank to get an improvement in my overdraft.
You paint a very strange picture of the religious life, Father Pike.
What religion are you, Mr. Kumar?
My religion does not concern this court.
You're an agnostic.
Yes, I suppose I am. How did you know?
Because only an agnostic can be quite so embarrassed about his lack of opinion. And so he should be.
Father Pike.
And, Mr. Kumar, like most agnostics, you seem to have an incurably sentimental idea about religious life. I fear that Bing Crosby had a great deal to answer for.
I think we can safely leave Mr. Crosby's career to the judgment of posterity. What we're concerned with here, Father Pike, is a collection of ecclesiastical regalia valued at some £100,000, which you admit to taking.
Reclaiming.
Father Pike, you cannot reclaim what is not yours.
Oh, Mr. Kumar, I think you've made your point. Let's leave it at that. Father Pike, I wonder if you'd answer me something. What would you say have been your principal achievements since you became abbot of the monastery of St. Joseph of Cupertino?
Oh, I don't think that's for me to say.
Oh,
no.
come now, there's no need for modesty, Father Pike.
I'm not, alas, given to modesty, my lord. It is a source of constant contrition. Achievements.
Yeah.
Well, God be praised, I think there have been two. I've managed to arrange the monastery's accounts in some sort of order. I've managed to rationalize the monastery's commercial enterprises.
The monastery is engaged in commercial enterprises, Father?
Oh, yes, my lord, in a modest way. How else could we survive?
What commercial enterprises?
We raise turkeys and we grow bulbs.
For the commercial market?
Yes. In fact, I think I might say that, cost-effectively speaking, we have the most commercially efficient produce of turkeys and bulbs in the Fulchester area. We're now endeavouring to start a small herd of pedigree Frisians. By that time, we hope to be entirely self-supporting, food-wise.
Food-wise, yes. You describe yourself more as the managing director of a successful business than as the abbot of a monastery.
Well, the roles are not dissimilar, my lord.
Well, let's get on.
Father Pike, it is true, is it not, that my client, Miss Jessica Montford, applied to you for access for her and her expert to examine the collection of vestments?
Yes.
It is also true, is it not, that you refused her?
Yes, it is.
Why?
The vestments are very old and fragile.
Not too fragile to be stuffed in a coffin with a dead body.
I didn't want them injured.
Well, will you now permit Miss Montford and her expert access to this collection?
Very well.
Why does Miss Montford wish to examine the vestments, Mr. Kumar?
Oh, in order to compare them to an inventory to the Montford collection, which was made in 1790, my lord. Father Pike, you have said that you feel contrition about your lack of modesty and humility. Well, do you now also feel contrite about your actions which have led up to this trial?
No, sir, I do not.
Thank you very much, Father Pike.
Father Pike, you've said your order is not wealthy.
That's true.
But I'm right in thinking that at one time the Compostellans were a wealthy order.
Yes, very many years ago.
What happened, Father?
Well, Henry VIII expropriated our lands in this country. And during the French Revolution, lands in France were lost. There have been 2 world wars and other incidents that have dissipated our fortunes in other parts of Europe.
That is why you as abbot have to be so concerned about money and finance, is it not? What would have happened had you not taken the Alb of St. Honoratus and the other vestments from the Comte's chateau?
Well, we'd never have got them back.
Explain to us why that would be.
Well, what should we do? Appeal to the Comte's better nature? I tried that. It didn't work.
Could you have offered to purchase them from him?
Why should we? They belong to us. Besides, we couldn't have raised £1,000, much less the £100,000 he seems to think they're worth.
Could you not have gone to law?
We raised an action in France. Pursued one of the richest men in Europe through the courts of Europe. No, we couldn't have afforded that. Litigation, as you must well know, is notoriously expensive. No, I took the only course that was open to me.
Yes. Now, my learned friend has made much of the fact that Miss Montford and her expert have not been given access to the vestments.
Yes, I didn't want anyone to see them at that time.
Why was that?
Well, I didn't know who Miss Montford was. She could have been a tool of the Comte's. She could have been sent to steal back the vestments.
The name of Montford meant nothing to you?
Nothing at all.
You never heard of the Montford collection?
I didn't think anybody had until today.
Thank you, Father. Does your lordship have any questions?
No. You may leave the witness box, Father Pike.
Thank you, my lord.
That's the case for the defense, my lord.
Very well.
I call my client, Miss Jessica Montford. You are Jessica Gwyneth Montford.
I am.
You live at Ayrton Cottage, St. Pager's Lane, Stamford, Lincolnshire.
Yes.
You're a school teacher.
I teach medieval history and games at St. Pager's School for Girls.
St. Pager's?
You may have heard of it, my lord.
No.
It's a very well-known private school.
It is your contention, is it not, Miss Montford, that the collection of vestments purchased by the Comte de St. Juste and subsequently taken by Father Pike are in fact the collection once held by your family for over 150 years?
It is more than a contention, Mr. Kumar. It is a fact. Those vestments are from the Montford collection and were left to me by my great-uncle, Daniel Montford.
When did your great-uncle die?
In 1968.
How old were you then?
20.
And you became fully entitled to your great-uncle's estate when you became 21?
In 1969, that's correct.
Yes, Miss Montford, Father Pike has told us that his order acquired the collection in the 1890s.
In 1898, to be precise, my lord.
Oh, you're good at dates, are you?
I teach history, my lord.
Oh, yes. Father Pike has also said that his order was deprived of the collection in 1968.
I believe that is the official story.
Yes, so if this is the Montford collection, that is for the jury to decide. It was in the custody of the Compostellan order from 1898 to 1968.
Well, surely there can be no argument about that,
Well,
my
whether
lord.
or not there's any argument about it, there is the difficulty of the statute of limitations.
I beg your pardon?
The Acts of Limitation provide that no court shall entertain proceedings on various matters after a certain period of time has elapsed.
I don't think I understand.
Well, now, Miss Montfort, if I were to acquire something from you by non-criminal means and you don't reclaim it after the period of limitation has passed, you have no legal remedy. No cause of action exists more than 6 years after the event giving rise to it. Now, there are exceptions in matters dealing with land, but that doesn't concern us here.
But that's monstrously unfair, my lord.
Yes, it may be unfair, but that is the law, Miss Montfort. Now, it seems to me that in your case, the period of limitation began in 1898, and it expired 6 years thereafter in the year 1904.
But I couldn't have done anything about it in 1898. I wasn't born till 1948.
There are certain exceptions. You're not aware of all this.
No, my lord.
Time does not run against a person until he or she is adult, nor does it run against a lunatic.
Oh, yes. I've been through all this with my lawyer. Great-uncle Daniel was as nutty as a fruitcake, my lord.
Can this be proved, Mr. Kumar?
Well, for over 70 years, he was firmly convinced he was a melon.
A melon?
He used to hang from trees.
Yes, well, thank you, Miss Montfort. My lord, we have managed to obtain a medical certificate signed in 1898, which certifies Daniel Montfort as a lunatic.
Yes.
There are copies, my lord.
Yes.
Autumn was always the dangerous time for great-uncle Daniel.
Autumn?
Well, that was when he became ripe. He used to drop.
Where?
To the ground, my lord.
Melons don't grow on trees, Miss Montfort.
I don't think horticulture was Uncle Daniel's strong point, my lord.
Evidently.
Anyway, he died at the age of 92, when some children shook the tree he was hanging from.
Daniel Montfort inherited the estate when?
In 1897, my lord, when he came of age. In 1898, he was certified insane.
He died in September 1968, and I inherited, as I said, in 1969 when I was 21.
So your case is that the period of limitation in the matter of Daniel Montfort doesn't apply. It applies only from the date of his death in 1968.
Yes, my lord, that is precisely how my case is put. All the relevant documents, the will, Daniel Montfort's death certificate, Miss Montfort's birth certificate, they're all in Bundle C.
Yes, yes, yes. Very well.
Now, Miss Montfort, in the defendant's evidence, we have heard how you applied to him for your expert to examine the vestments at the monastery of St. Joseph of Cupertino.
Yes.
Now, why did you wish to examine the vestment?
I wanted an expert to compare the collection held by Father Pike with an inventory made by my ancestor, Sir George Montfort, in 1790.
This inventory itemizes the entire Montfort collection of religious vestments, does it not?
It does.
My lord, this inventory, together with several other aged documents which are in Bundle D, is something which I wish to put in under the Civil Evidence Act.
No objections?
No, my lord.
Mr. Fry?
No, my lord.
Very well.
Miss Montfort, we shall shortly be hearing from your expert on medieval religious vestments, Miss Lorraine Telcher. But perhaps you could tell the court what her conclusions were.
Miss Telcher found that Sir George's inventory and the collection held by Father Pike were almost identical.
From which it might be assumed that the Compostellan Order is now holding the Montfort collection.
My property.
Precisely. Now, Miss Montfort, perhaps you would summarize the history of the Montfort collection. Insofar as it is documented by records in Bundle D. How did your family acquire the collection in the first place?
Through Francis Montfort. He came back from the Grand Tour in 1720 with a huge collection of objets d'art, statues, paintings, all kinds of things, including this collection of Opus Anglicanum.
He bought them?
Oh, yes. Francis practically bankrupted himself buying beautiful things.
Yes. Now, this collection of vestments remained in your family until 1898, approximately?
Yes.
Where were they kept?
At Montfort Hall in Lincolnshire.
Were they on display there?
Oh, no, they were locked up. After Francis, nobody in the family wanted anything to do with works of art ever again.
So it is, in fact, unlikely, to say the least, that anyone outside the family could have possibly known about this collection.
Very unlikely.
Now, the Montfort collection disappeared, did it not, about 1898?
Yes, just after Daniel was certified.
What were the circumstances of the disappearance?
Daniel gave them away.
Gave them away?
Yes.
To whom?
Oh, no one ever found out. He gave away a great many things just before he was certified.
What, for instance?
A serve dinner service, coach and pair, a shooting box in Scotland, and on 2 occasions his own clothing.
His own clothing?
He gave it away to beggars in the street, my lord. Caused quite a scandal at the time.
Were any of these things subsequently recovered?
Well, most of them, my lord, except for the clothing.
Yeah.
Was any immediate attempt made to trace the Montfort collection?
Yes, but it was never found. Someone had bought the collection, but they never discovered who.
So, in 1898, the Montfort collection vanished, seemingly for good.
Yes.
And since Daniel Montfort, the heir to the Montfort estate, was a certified lunatic, it would presumably have been difficult to pursue the search for the collection with any vigour.
Yes.
Did your grandfather do nothing about it?
Oh, well, he couldn't do very much. You see, he was only 17 and he'd just joined the Indian Army. Anyway, a few years later, he was killed on the northwest frontier.
I'm sorry. Was there no one else who could have pursued the search for the collection?
Only Mr. Patterson.
Who was he?
Oh, he was one of the lawyers who took over the running of the estate after Daniel was certified. But he did nothing.
Why not?
Because he was low church and he hated the whole idea of vestments anyway.
How did you manage to trace the collection to Father Pike?
Oh, through a newspaper story. I saw that the Comte de St was suing Father Pike for the stolen vestments. And in the story, they described the Carcassonne cope.
Oh, that is the early 13th century cope embroidered in Opus Anglicanum.
Yes. Well, the description of the cope matched Sir George's inventory. So I got in touch with the family solicitor and, well, here we are.
Well, lastly, Miss Montfort, if the jury decide in your favour and the collection is returned to you, what do you propose to do with it?
To put it on display. Or perhaps at St. Pagas.
What, the school at which you teach?
Yes. If that isn't practical, well, there are museums that would be only too glad to have it.
You would not sell the collection?
Good heavens, no. Americans might buy it. It might go out of the country. I couldn't bear that.
Thank you, Miss Montfort.
Yes, Mr. Fry?
Miss Montfort, in which newspaper was it that you read the description of the cope?
The Daily Telegraph.
That would be the Daily Telegraph of the 4th of August last year.
Well, I don't remember the date exactly.
It was the 4th of August. It's the only time the cope's been described.
I'll take your word for it.
You will find the relevant cutting in the first bundle of agreed documents, will not?
Yes, I have it, Mr. Fry.
Well, now, Miss Montfort, I wonder if you would be kind enough to read the description of the Carcassonne cope from that newspaper cutting of the 4th of August, 1973.
Very well. Thank you. Among the items in the collection is the so-called Carcassonne cope, a superb example of Opus Anglicanum embroidery dating from the first part of the 13th century. The cope is embroidered with scenes from the lives of the saints.
Thank you, Miss Montfort. That will be sufficient. Do you agree that that is an accurate description of the cope that was in the Comte's collection?
From the photographs, yes.
Yes. Now, would you please read the relevant description of the cope from Sir George Montfort's inventory? This is number 4 in the agreed bundle, my lord.
Yes.
The Carcassonne cope, purchased by Francis Montfort in 1720. The cope is ornamented with scenes from the Old Testament and Opus Anglicanum.
The Old Testament, Miss Montfort. Scenes from the Old Testament, not from the lives of the saints.
I'm sure that's just a mistake.
On whose part?
Well,
On Sir George Montfort's part or on the part of the reporter?
how do I know?
How indeed, Miss Montfort. Now, I'd like you to study the photographs of the embroidered details of the cope. What do you see in the first of those photographs?
Shows a half-naked man tied to a tree, being shot full of arrows by 2 other men.
Are you familiar with the Old Testament, Miss Montfort?
I do teach RI on occasions.
All right.
Religious instruction, my lord.
Good Lord.
And in preparing your RI lessons, did you ever come across in the Old Testament any mention of that scene?
Not that I can recall, but there are some very odd things in the Old Testament.
There are indeed, Miss Montfort, but I feel I must point out that the embroidery on that cope records a famous Christian legend, the martyrdom of St. Sebastian. You've heard of him?
Yes, of course I've heard of him.
Well, he lived about 300 AD, long after both the Old and the New Testaments were written.
We have no occasion to study the lives of saints at St. Pagas.
So you see, Miss Montfort, that the cope described by your ancestor and the cope purchased by my client and subsequently stolen by Father Pike are not the same garments.
But of course they are.
Well, how could they be?
Well, they must be.
Why? Whatever's happened to the Montfort collection, it is not the same collection purchased by my client.
I don't believe that.
You're suing over the wrong collection, Miss Montfort.
The case against Father Pike will be concluded tomorrow in the Crown Court. This is the last day of the civil action to determine the rightful owner of a £100,000 collection of historic church vestments. Jessica Montford is the third claimant.
Miss Montford, I hope you don't feel too battered by the cross-examination my learned friend Mr. Fry subjected you to yesterday.
It's all right, Mr. Lotterby. I don't bruise that easily.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, because it's my turn now, Miss Montford, and I must admit I also feel that there are certain discrepancies in the evidence you've given us.
Discrepancies? What do you mean?
Areas where fact and falsehood coincide.
I have told no lies. Just because the description of one garment in Sir George's inventory doesn't agree with a journalist's story. Really?
Well, let us look at another discrepancy, Miss Montford. You told my learned friend that it was the description in the Daily Telegraph of the Carcassonne coupe from the so-called Saint-Just collection that led you to become involved in this trial.
It wasn't only the description of the cope that put me on the track of the Montford collection.
Ah, what else was there?
Well, the Alb of St. Honoratus. It was mentioned by name in the article.
The Alb of St. Honoratus?
Yes.
How many Albs of St. Honoratus do you think there are in existence?
One, of course.
You teach medieval history, I believe.
Yes.
The Middle Ages was a period of great religious fervour, was it not?
Yes.
And the worship of sacred relics was an important part of religious life.
Yes.
It said that there were enough pieces of the true cross, for example, floating around in the 14th century to build a fleet of wooden ships.
It's easy enough to mock now.
No, I'm not mocking, Miss Montford. I'm just saying that you, as an historian, must have been aware that it was likely that there was more than one Alb of St. Honoratus in existence.
I've only heard of the one.
You mean the one mentioned in Sir George's inventory?
Yes.
What evidence do you have that it is the same one? The two copes would appear to be different.
Sir George must have made a mistake.
Could surely have told the difference between a naked man being shot full of arrows and a man in a lion's den.
Maybe he wasn't interested in the collection.
Well, he was interested enough to make this inventory. When did you last see this Montford collection?
Yesterday. Father Pike at last allowed my expert to examine it.
Prior to that, Miss Montford, when had you last seen the so-called Montford collection?
Well, I hadn't.
You had never seen it?
No.
Well, why was that?
How could I? Our family lost the collection in 1898.
Then how was it that a short article in the Daily Telegraph about a collection of religious vestments and regalia triggered off your memory of a family collection that had disappeared nearly 80 years ago?
Because I'm doing research for a book I'm writing about the family. You do realise we're descended from Simon de Montfort?
How fascinating. No, I hadn't realised that. What else did you inherit, Miss Montfort, apart from these family papers?
Some money.
How much money?
My lord, do I have to answer that question?
Yes, I'm afraid so, Miss Montfort.
£987.
987. And were you the only legatee?
Yes.
Where had all the wealth of the Montforts gone?
The same way as the collection. It vanished.
And when you read that article, you saw a chance of recouping the Montfort fortune.
Nonsense.
You see, I suggest, Miss Montfort, that when you read the description of the so-called Saint-Just collection, you saw that it was close enough to Sir George's inventory of the old Montfort collection to make your entry into this trial a reasonable gamble.
It's no gamble. It's the same collection. Besides, why should I risk losing a very expensive court case just to give St. Pagans a collection of medieval embroidery?
Well, the answer to that question is quite simple, Miss Montfort, because the stakes are high. £100,000 high, to be exact. No further questions.
Miss Montfort, regardless of the cost of this action, what is your intention for the Montfort collection?
That it should be on display.
Do you have any intention of selling it?
None at all.
Thank you. Now, my learned friends have made much of the fact that there are discrepancies between Sir George's inventory and the collection Father Pike took from the Comte de St. Juste. Do these minor discrepancies surprise you?
Oh, not in the slightest. Sir George just wasn't interested in the collection.
Why was that?
Because he was more interested in gaming than in works of art.
He was a gambler.
Oh, yes. On one occasion, he is said to have lost £10,000 on a single turn of the cards.
Lord, really, my friend is abusing the latitude which Mr. Lotterby and I have permitted him. This is all hearsay. The man was dead at least 100 years before the witness was born.
Yes, Mr. Kumar, we really can't have this.
Very well, my lord. Thank you, Miss Montfort. You are Miss Lorraine Margaret Telcher of Church End House, Hastings.
I am.
You're the author of A History of Embroidery in Medieval England, The Middle Ages and the Needle, Opus Anglicanum, a historical survey.
And embroidery in the medieval church, yes, yes.
Quite. Now, you are, in fact, an expert on medieval embroidery and ecclesiastical vestments.
Yes, I suppose I must be. Yes, yes, of course I am.
Miss Telcher,
Yes,
I wonder
yes.
if you could begin by explaining something that has been puzzling me all through this trial. What exactly is Opus Anglicanum?
Ah, yes. Well, it literally means English work, my lord.
Yes, I do know some Latin, Miss Telcher.
Oh, do you? Oh, good, good. Yes, well, Opus Anglicanum, de opere Anglicana, d'ouvrage d'Angleterre, etc., is more a style of embroidery design than a separate technique, in my opinion.
I see, thank you.
Though I must in all fairness say that dear Dr. Orwell thought that working a split stitch in spiral form and depressing the centre was more typical. Dear man.
You mentioned design, Miss Telcher.
Design? Ah, yes. Based on the Romanesque design, but less rigid, more naturalistic. Certain elements very much in evidence. Serifs with eyed wings, sexfoil rosettes, a fantastic and foliated type of arcading, intricately patterned gold backgrounds, all these peculiar to Opus Anglicanum.
The gold thread was used.
And silver. Silver gilt, silver threads, beads, pearls, all used.
Who did this work?
Guilds of embroiderers, professionals, mostly in workshops in London. It was very good investment if you could afford it.
What was?
Financing a team of embroiderers. Always a great sale abroad for Opus Anglicanum. Of course, the Black Death finished it.
I beg your pardon?
The Black Death. Decimated the guilds. No embroiderers, no Opus Anglicanum.
Yes, but I mean, surely embroidery continued.
Oh, yes, but inferior embroidery, inferior design.
I see. Miss Telcher, you have at last had an opportunity of examining the so-called St. Juste collection and comparing it with the 1790 Montfort inventory.
Oh, yes, yes, I have. My original report was based on photographs, but yesterday I saw the collection.
What conclusion did you reach? I mean, is the St. Juste collection the Montfort collection?
Oh, yes. Yes, scarcely any doubt of it.
I mean, in spite of the discrepancies between Sir George's inventory and the collection.
Oh, that man was a fool. He knew nothing about embroidery or vestments. He didn't know a satin stitch from a stem stitch. I'm really surprised he knew what a dalmatic was.
So, thank you, Miss Telcher.
Miss Telcher, when my learned friend asked you if the St. Just and Montfort collections were identical, you said that there was scarcely any doubt of it.
Yes, yes.
That's not very definite.
Well, it's as definite as I'm going to be, Mr. Whoever you are.
Mr. Fry.
Huh? Oh, yes, my lord, thank you. Well, it's as definite as I'm going to be.
Which suggests that there is an element of doubt.
Well, there's an element of doubt in anything. Well, the only way to be 100% sure of those garments would be if you could trace their existence every single day since 1230 AD or thereabouts. And unless you could get hold of Doctor Who, I don't see how anybody can do that.
You said that in the 13th century, wealthy financiers would commission large pieces of embroidery from these workshops.
Correct.
With the aim of subsequently exporting these embroidered garments to the continent.
Yes, I imagine so.
Well, that being the case, would not the designs tend to be similar, perhaps with certain scenes being depicted again and again on a number of garments?
Well, there is some repetition, but...
Now, we know that there is a discrepancy between Sir George Montfort's inventory and the garment which my client purchased.
Yes, well...
Well, is there not then a possibility that there were in fact two copes, one depicting scenes from the lives of the saints and one depicting scenes from the Old Testament?
Yes, but what about the Alb and the chasuble and the dalmatic? Apart from minor discrepancies, they are as described in Sir George's inventory.
What discrepancies?
Minor discrepancies.
For example?
Oh, gold thread when it's silver gilt, beads when it's actually seed pearls. But then, as I've said, whoever wrote that inventory didn't know his amice from his tunicle.
What about the scenes depicted on the chasuble?
Ah, yes. Nativity of the Virgin. Virgin and child enthroned, as described in the inventory.
Common scenes of Christian iconography.
Yes.
Scenes that might be found on almost any ecclesiastical vestment of the period.
Yes, I suppose so.
Thank you, Miss Telcher.
Miss Telcher, it seems to me that you and Miss Montfort are trying to have this both ways.
Have what?
Sir George Montfort's inventory.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Well, you were saying that Sir George's inventory is inaccurate when it describes something that doesn't tally with the so-called Saint-Just collection, such as the cope. But then, on the other hand, when an item on the inventory appears correctly to describe an item on the Saint-Just collection, then it is accurate. And I'm saying, Miss Telcher, you can't have it both ways.
I have said that there are discrepancies between the inventory and the collection, but that they are minor ones.
But how can you say that, Miss Telcher? Neither you nor I nor anyone else are in a position to compare the inventory with the original Montfort collection. We are 180 years too late.
I have studied medieval embroidery for 30 years. I have a certain reputation in the field. I am scarcely likely deliberately to stand up and make a fool of myself in front of a court full of people, not to mention the press.
But even experts make mistakes, Miss Telcher, just like we ordinary mortals.
I have not claimed to be infallible.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Have you had an opportunity of studying the photographs and documents relating to the treasure of the Compostellans, which have been supplied by the defendant, the Right Reverend Simon Pike?
I have.
And what was your verdict?
That the photographs are old and lack definition, and the so-called inventory is pathetically inadequate.
All the same, were you able to identify any items in the Saint-Just collection?
No, I was not.
Sir George's inventory is unillustrated and vague, yet you are able to identify certain items therein. Now, the Compostellans' inventory, though equally vague, is at least illustrated, yet you are suddenly unable to make positive identification.
I have simply given you my opinion as an expert.
And you are not likely to retract it now, are you, Miss Telcher? No further questions?
You are Dr. Patrick Atwater, an assistant keeper with the Department of Manuscripts of the British Museum.
I am.
Will you please state your qualifications?
I received a double first in history at Cambridge. My PhD thesis was on the subject of the development of calligraphy amongst the monastic orders of the Carolingian Empire. I also have a BSc Manchester.
Thank you. You have been able to examine all the documents connected with this case?
I have.
Let us begin then, Doctor, with the document which gave the Alb of St. Honoratus and the Carcassonne Cope, etc., to the Compostellan order. It's number 3 in the second bundle of documents, my lord.
I have it.
Would you please describe the document, Dr. Atwater?
This document is written in Latin on parchment with an iron gall ink and bears the seal of Raymond of Toulouse. It is dated 1266.
Is the document authentic?
No.
How do you know that?
3 reasons. Firstly, because the seal on the document differs from the authentic seal of Count Raymond of Toulouse. If you study the comparison photographs I provided, you will see what I mean.
Oh, yes, these are numbers 4 and 5.
Secondly, the deed of gift is inadequately worded.
What do you mean, Doctor?
Well, a count or king giving something to a monastic order usually provided a flowery document of considerable length. Now, this deed is short to the point of curtness. Thirdly, the penmanship is similar to that which has been identified as belonging to a scriptorium of the Compostellan monastery at Maastricht in Holland.
A Compostellan monastery? Oh, so you mean the Compostellans were forgers?
Most large monasteries during the 14th and 15th centuries had scriptoria where the scribes worked. Now, some of these scribes, many of them, were professional forgers.
Yes, but can you tell me when this document was forged?
Sometime in the late 14th century, possibly early 15th century. See, I have identified the hand quite precisely.
So it would seem from the documentary evidence that the Compostellan order acquired this collection sometime in the 14th or even 15th century, not in 1266, as they claim.
That's one assumption.
Now, what about the inventory of Sir George Montfort, dated 1790?
Written in carbon ink with a quill pen on rag paper which bears the watermark of John Spellman of Dartford, Kent. The ink, the paper and the script are all consistent with the date of 1790.
Thank you. And now let us turn to the Hungarian letter dated 1801, which was given to the Comte de St by Signor Rossi as authentication of the collection which he purchased.
This is an obvious and very crude forgery.
How do you know that?
The paper's quite wrong.
Could you explain, Doctor?
Well, the paper the letter is written on is old, but unfortunately it is made from mechanical wood pulp.
What's the significance of that?
Well, mechanical wood pulp was not employed for paper making until 1870, 1880, you see. I would say that this particular piece of paper is not more than 80 years old. And of course the ink is quite wrong.
The ink?
The ink has been artificially aged by the addition of Indian ink. It's a very crude method of aging ink, although many forgers still use it.
Finally, could you give a date when this forgery was made?
Sometime within the last 6 or 7 years, I would have thought.
Thank you, Doctor.
No questions, my lord.
Dr. Atwater, you said the Compostellan document is forged.
There's no doubt about it.
Quite so. Now, tell me, why did monasteries find it necessary to employ forgers?
Because of the development of a legal system based on documents. The Normans, I suppose, started it off.
Yes. Now, could you explain that, please?
Well, a monastery might have owned land for centuries and yet have no deed proving ownership. Abbots and priors, therefore, had recourse to forgers to provide these deeds.
Yes. So that, in fact, the forgery of this deed of gift from Count Raymond of Toulouse to the Compostellan order could have been the Compostellans' only way of establishing that this collection of ecclesiastical regalia was theirs by right.
This is one explanation.
Well, the fact that the deed is a forgery does not disprove the fact that this collection of religious treasures was given to the Compostellan order in 1266.
Well, it doesn't prove anything one way or the other.
Thank you, Doctor.
Mr. Kumar, do you wish to...
No.
No. You can leave the witness box. Thank you, Dr. Atwater. What's that? Oh, yes. We'll adjourn now. I'll hear the speeches after lunch.
All stand.
My lord, members of the jury, that the Compostellans once owned a collection of medieval vestments, I do not doubt. But what proof have we been offered that this is their missing collection? The word of Father Pike, a self-confessed thief. And even if it had once been theirs, what right do they have to it now? In law, my client, Miss Jessica Montfort, has a clear claim to this part of her inheritance if you accept that the collection is the Montfort collection. Now she, unlike the defendant who chose to take the law into his own hands, is pursuing her just claim through due and proper processes of law. Now, the collection was purchased by her ancestor in 1720, and although, as you have heard, it passed out of the family's control in 1898, her right to claim it remains in law. Now, both my learned friends have made mock of Sir George Montfort's inventory of the Montfort collection. But why should they? I mean, true, he was no scholar, but in the main, his inventory is accurate. And let us not forget that Sir George's inventory is the oldest authentic inventory of the collection that we have. For the Comte de St claim is based on forged documents, as also is the claim of the Compostellans. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there is only one rightful owner to this collection. It's my client, Miss Jessica Montfort. At least, she isn't planning to sell it immediately.
My lord, members of the jury, to whom do these treasures belong? The Comte de St. Juste, Miss Jessica Montfort, or the monastic order of the Compostellans? Now, let us look firstly at the claim of the Comte de St. Juste. Now, he has told us that the treasures represented to him simply a financial investment. He had bought them suspiciously cheaply from an Italian dealer not noted for his honesty, together with a letter dated 1801 which purported to authenticate their history, but which has since been shown to be a forgery. Well, the Comte was prompt enough to obtain expert opinion as to the authenticity of his purchases, but did he bother to get the letter authenticated? He did not. You may wonder why. Now, the claim of the Montfort family, which rests simply on an inventory made in 1790 by Sir George Montfort. Now, it is true that there are certain similarities between the Montfort collection and the Compostellan collection. Well, they are both examples of 13th century Opus Anglicanum. But as we have seen, they are not identical. Ladies and gentlemen, the Compostellans have once more recovered their treasures. I ask you to allow the Compostellans to keep them.
May it please your lordship, members of the jury, I have only 3 points to bring to your attention. 1. All that we know of the deed of gift made by Raymond of Toulouse to the Compostellan order is that it was a forgery. This means that whether the Compostellans were ever really entitled to the collection has not been established. 2. However genuine the Montfort inventory may be as a document, it does not describe accurately what was in the collection of the Comte de St. 3. That the Hungarian letter given to my client was a forgery is irrelevant. It was made several years before he purchased the collection from a dealer he thought to be reputable. So, since my client bought the collection in good faith, since the abbot admits taking a collection to which his counsel has been unable to establish any entitlement, and since Miss Montfort's claim is to a collection that differs from that owned by the Comte de St, I submit that you have no choice but to find for my client.
Members of the jury, the Comte de St. possessed certain regalia. The defendant, the abbot, admits that he took it and still has it in his possession. So it follows, then, that the Count is entitled to the return of his regalia. Unless either the abbot or Miss Montfort, the second plaintiff, has shown, to your satisfaction on the balance of probabilities, that he or she is the rightful owner. So the Count doesn't have to prove anything. He's entitled to the return of his property, unless either of the other two has shown that they are the rightful owners. Now, the abbot has said that the regalia is identical to the one belonging to his order and which he saw in Czechoslovakia in 1965 and which disappeared in 1968 during the troubles in that country. Now, counsel, Mr. Fry, counsel for the Count, has said there might well be 2 sets of regalia, and he casts doubt on the reliability of the abbot's evidence because of the way the abbot behaved in France, stealing the regalia, and because the abbot himself admits that he only saw the regalia in Czechoslovakia in 1965 once, and then for only 3 hours. So the question is, when you consider the abbot's evidence, how reliable is it? Now, even if you accept the abbot's evidence, the matter can't rest there, because Miss Montfort claims that the regalia belonged to her family, even though it was in the Compostellan's custody from 1898 to 1968. Now, there is very clear evidence that the Montfort family did possess a set of regalia. It was given away by some mad heir in 1898. So once again, you have to ask yourselves, was there more than one set of regalia? And whether there was or not, has Miss Montfort satisfied you on the balance of probabilities that the Montfort regalia is the regalia now in the possession of the abbot? If you are so satisfied, you must find for Miss Montfort. Will you now please retire and consider your verdict?
All stand. Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Please answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict upon which you are all agreed?
Yes.
Do you find for the defendant, the Right Reverend Father Simon Pike, or the first plaintiff, Comte Philippe de St. Juste, or the second plaintiff, Jessica Montfort?
First plaintiff.
Lord, I would like to make an application for costs on behalf of my client.
Next week, a chance for you to join another jury in assessing the facts when our cameras return to watch a leading case in the Crown Court.